It's the Kyle Hyman Show on Redeemer Radio.
This is Kyle Hyman, and joining us from the University of St. Francis, here to talk about Advent, Christmas, and how philosophy fits into all of this is Dr. Lewis Pearson. Thanks for being here, Dr. Pearson.
Well, thanks for having me, Kyle.
You pointed out to me some articles from C.S. Lewis, which are really great reads. It's kind of like a countercultural Advent, which I'm all about. You want to kind of give us a little bit of that?
Sure, yeah. Well, I wanted to start briefly by saying I was raised to think Christmas had to do with a Grinch, had to do with Frosty the Snowman. I was raised by television. And
Yeah.
It was late in life that I realized, well, I was an adult revert, what it meant to keep the liturgical calendar and what Advent actually was about.
Yeah.
And so C.S. Lewis actually talks about my old state of being, and it's the state I think many of us continue to live in given the cultural influences. So there's a book called God in the Dock. It's a collection of essays by C.S. Lewis. But if people can find it, in this, there's a lot of nice little gems. Two little gems. One, and they're both 2-page essays, really short. It's called Xmas and Christmas, a lost chapter from Herodotus. And so in this little 2-page essay, he describes from the point of view of like an alien anthropologist what this looks like. And if I'll just read one little piece so people have a feel for it.
Yeah.
In the middle of winter, when fogs and rains most abound, they have a great festival which they call Xmas. And for 50 days they prepare for it in the fashion I shall describe. First of all, every citizen is obliged to send to each of his friends and relations a square piece of hard paper stamped with a picture, which in their speech is called an Xmas card. But the pictures represent birds sitting on branches or trees with a dark green prickly leaf, or else men in such garments as the Neoterbians. Neoterb is Britain spelled backward, so he's telling it as if it's some strange place. Believe that their ancestors wore 200 years ago, riding in coaches such as their ancestors used, or houses with snow on their roofs. And the Neoterbians are unwilling to say what these pictures have to do with the festival, guarding, as I suppose, some sacred mystery. And because all men must send these cards, the marketplace is filled with the crowd of those buying them, so that there is great labor and weariness.
Yeah.
And then he juxtaposes this later with Christmas and what some of the people in the society do and why they have Xmas and Christmas on the same day, because they're clearly not the same thing.
Right.
And another essay, so I don't want to read more. I'll leave this as a gem for listeners to find and enjoy themselves, is What Christmas Means to Me. Another short little 2-page essay. But he starts by saying Christmas means 3 things: a religious holiday, a general popular holiday for merrymaking, and the business aspect, which he calls the racket. And then in the little 2 pages, he explains why it is all 3 have converged on this day.
Yeah.
So I'd say for me, C.S. Lewis, he was a late find in my life when I reverted to the faith. Actually, it was C.S. Lewis and Peter Kraft are the 2 people I found sort of groping along as an adult, trying to find out how my life of the mind would fit together with my newly rediscovered Catholic faith. But the way that I used to celebrate was, like I said, like everyone else, Christmas parties are now. Everything else is happening now. And then when December 25th comes, everyone's excited. I was excited the very first thing in the morning, and then by 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, depressed, right? Tired, weary, because we've already been partying for however long, since Thanksgiving or something. So you've had other guests on, and listeners to Redeemer know about, Advent is Advent, and Christmas is Christmas. Christmas starts on the 25th, but liturgically there's an octave. It goes until January 1st with the Solemnity of Mary. It can go for 12 days, ending on January 6th with the Epiphany. It can go for 40 days, ending with the presentation of the Lord in the temple on February 2nd. Groundhog Day is actually a derivation of that feast.
Oh.
Yeah, so Groundhog Day is a far echo from actually an old Catholic liturgical celebration, the 40th day of Christmas. But people would think you were crazy if you thought Christmas extends that far. I mean, let alone February 2nd to January 1st.
If you leave your tree up, people are going to start asking questions.
Yeah, they think you're lazy or... Yeah. But I found when we started keeping Advent, as you say, counterculturally, I was an adult, I was married, and we had a great priest who had formed us for our wedding prep. And he was pointing out to us, there's a reason we sing O Come Emmanuel, but we don't sing Hark the Herald angels sing or Silent Night or any of those things until the Nativity. It's because this is the time of waiting and preparation.
Right.
And he pointed this out, and he kept this going, and eventually I started realizing I was converted in my mind and my heart in many ways, but not in my life completely. There were so many vestiges of how the culture celebrates things, and culture's fine as far as it goes, but when it's going against the current of a liturgically lived life, where you can sort of appreciate the fullness of the church and living part of that life, I started realizing how much I was out of step with the church. So the very first Christmas where we celebrated Advent, and for instance, we didn't sing those Christmas songs till Christmas Day. It was so hard.
As a family?
As a family, yeah. So we have 6 kids now. At the time, we only had one. But yeah, that early, it was difficult. And I'd say now with the kids that we have, since they've gotten used to celebrating Advent in a way that's preparing us so that we actually have great joy and stamina to, have the feast when the Nativity comes, I started realizing things I saw in my kids and things I see in my students would start coming out. There's a kind of, how to put it, I know the answer, I got it right, I know how to do Christmas and you don't, I know how to do Advent and you don't.
Right.
And so it can be innocent, but it can become something that's pernicious if it's not checked early. And so one of the things I saw, I think that my philosophical training helped me to see, is that Advent, this particular time of year, is almost unique. I don't want to say completely unique. We philosophers we're afraid of saying something that's too definitive, but I'll say this. Most of the time in America, most people don't care what other people are doing. We just let them do what they do, right?
Yeah.
You do you, as our relativist culture will often put it, right?
Right.
So we don't care. It's Talk Like a Pirate Day.
Yeah.
It's National Wheaties Month or whatever, right? These holidays abound. But it comes to this time of year, and everybody's telling everyone else, you're not keeping the season properly. This is how you do it. This is how you not do it. You need to say Merry Christmas. You need to say Happy Holidays. You need to say,
Right.
We're watching each other in a way that's almost unique throughout the entire year. We don't typically do this. And one of the things that occurred to me was, well, typically in a relativist culture, things as they appear to me are just things as they are, right? I mean, there's an ancient and medieval distinction, things in themselves and things as they appear to us.
Okay.
Things as they appear to us are not necessarily the fullness of the thing in itself, right? So, for instance, Thomas Aquinas uses this distinction early on in his Summa Theologica, when he says, for instance, the 5 ways, the 5 arguments for God's existence, right? They're often pulled out as excerpts for proofs for God's existence, how it's rationally demonstrable. But before that question, he actually brings this up. He says, God is knowable in himself, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's knowable to us. So is it rational that he exists? Is it provable that he exists? Can I give proofs? Yes, yes, yes. But do they mean anything to you? Not necessarily. So calculus, for instance, there might be a calculus problem that in itself actually works. But if I'm a 5-year-old, it means nothing to me. Right. So the thing in itself and the thing to us is a distinction that if you keep in mind can help you guard against, arrogance in what you think you know, right? And so I think one of the things that we see in this season is there's the thing in itself, the season of preparation or celebration or whatever it is we think we're doing. And there's the thing to us. And so, like I said before, in our relativist culture, typically we don't care about the thing in itself. We just care about the thing to us. So whatever the thing is to you, I don't care. Whatever it is to me, that's all I care about.
Right.
And I never comment on your life, and I don't care if you comment on my life.
Yeah.
But this season, we do care. So it seems to be one of these times where we actually aren't concerned only with the thing as it appears to me. I care about the thing in itself because as it's appearing to you is wrong. You're getting the story wrong. And so I really think there is God's grace in this season because whether or not people are keeping it well and know what it means, this concern for truth is something that's very rare, I think, in this sort of cultural conversation we have. And the conversation, even if it amounts to bumper stickers saying, keep Christ in Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, even the fact that people care at all about this season, especially those that would claim to not be faithful or be agnostic or atheist, the fact that they have some kind of investment, even on a superficial level, I think is fascinating too.
Yeah, yeah. So when I was correcting my children or my students who have this triumphal tone where they know what the season means, what Advent means, the religious sense of it, they get upset. Let's say we'd go to a store and they'd say, they shouldn't have these things up, right? And it helped me to sort of put things into context. I mean, part of it was the enthusiasm of the new convert, right? Realizing my old ways were the ways of the old man. I have to put those off.
Yeah.
So after I got over that initial phase and I could see clearly again the good of the things we do and how these things develop, I realized, well, the stores have to have things before the season begins so we can buy them and prepare, right? And so it started that way when I helped to correct my children. Now, don't blame Walmart or Target or wherever we might be for doing this. They're putting things up to remind us, oh, if you want to prepare for your celebrations when they come, buy them now and then you'll be ready, right? And so they backed off when it came to the merchant, right, who's selling the wares to the populace. But then people are putting their things up. And I started reflecting on my own life. How did it come to be the way it is for most of our culture? And as I mentioned, as an adult revert, raised on television mainly, it came because I didn't have a magisterium. I didn't have a pope. I didn't have an authority. Right? So for Catholics, when we have a liturgical calendar that is set for us so that we can do the shared work of worship together according to this calendar, we don't have to worry about what people do with their private devotions, right? I mean, as far as they're licit. So if you like Our Lady of Guadalupe, which we love in our family, if you like St. Lucy's Day, we're having a big party for St. Lucy's Day. Your producer's actually coming to it. You can do that. And other people aren't threatened by it, and they can do it if they want. But generally speaking, the liturgical calendar is the thing that we have as something we can rest on.
Right.
But in the culture, who's the Pope, right? What's the liturgical calendar? The closest thing we have to it is the big influencers in our society, for better and for worse.
Right.
Consumerism is that influencer that touches everyone, regardless of what videos they like to stream or whatever else they do in their life. We all buy stuff. And so I realized the reason we get upset when the stores start, quote unquote, start Christmas early because they put things out is because that's our Pope when we have no Pope. And so we realize we want this season to be done communally. And when the people who set the boundaries for our communal celebration stray from what we're used to, we get upset.
Yeah.
And so they're showing Christmas things on TV too soon. TV's another one, right?
This is so good. Can you give me like a practical of something that you do as a family that might be kind of countercultural as a way to celebrate Advent? You mentioned your Our Lady of Guadalupe or St. Lucy. Anything particular that you do?
Sure. I'd say all of them sort of add up to a general attitude. And it's interesting, I know that you had on the morning of Our Lady of Guadalupe, James Baxter and Nathaniel Benversey for Exodus 90. Day 90 is for me the day you had them on, Our Lady of Guadalupe. So today, that day was day 90 for me.
Wow.
It was weird for me because I was in my own Lenten period, so to speak, right? My own desert doing Exodus 90. Apart from my family, typically we do all the seasons together. So Lent is clearly one of those. Advent, we do a bit like Lent. But Advent is different from Lent because the church has given us so many celebrations. So December 3rd is my confirmation saint, Francis Xavier. I'm half Japanese. He was the one I chose when I was going through confirmation. We have St. Juan Diego, Our Lady of Guadalupe, St. Lucy. We have a big party because one of our daughters is named Lucy. My son, my youngest son, his baptism day is on the Feast of St. Damasus. So we have all these days during a time where we're trying to prepare that we're celebrating. So we have this mix of desert and feast. So what we do is we don't have any sweets. We play Advent and seasonal songs. So this is another thing that I realized when I'm putting together playlists for the family. There's Christmas songs, meaning the Nativity, Hark the Herald Angels Sing, things like that. There's seasonal songs like Jingle Bells. There's Advent songs that have to do with the coming. And they're all different. But we just play them indiscriminately and call it Christmas music. And so becoming more mindful of that affects what we listen to in the house. We have wise men, little toys that travel around the house. They're slowly making their way. And on January the 6th, they'll finally get there. But we have a creche where the players will start slowly showing up on the scene. Our Advent wreath, we bless, we have daily readings. But all these little things add up for the kids. I've forgotten St. Nicholas Day, right? So we have where our boots filled with little candies, things like that. And so for this reason, it helps the kids I'll put it this way. So our kids know that Santa Claus is something based on St. Nicholas, but Santa Claus is a story. And when we're often asked by our friends who have children, how could you do that? You've destroyed their childhood, or how do we do that and without messing up other kids? The thing I like to tell them is stories, just because they didn't happen, aren't garbage. Right? I mean, think about how we love our shows, our stories.
Right.
And how we get upset when the writers have ruined a character. Right.
Yeah.
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 So just because it's fiction doesn't mean it's not meaningful. Literature is a picture of the human condition, and this is one of the reasons why it feeds us as a culture, and any culture. Mm-hmm. Santa Claus is another story. So the kids know Transformers aren't real. They know SpongeBob isn't real, but they still enjoy it.
Yeah.
Santa Claus is another story, right? So for our kids, they'll see, that's just a story we don't really care about. But if you want to tell that story, we can tell that story like we can tell Transformer stories. Uh-huh. So that's one of the things we do also. We make it clear every day we celebrate, it's not we're doing it right because we're the hardcore Catholics. It's today's the feast of St. Lucy. St. Lucy, pray for us. We hope you have a great feast day today, right? So every day is like a little birthday.
Yeah. Well, this has been fascinating. And the articles that you mentioned from C.S. Lewis, I'll put links to those in the show notes because they're really short, but great, humorous, but poignant reads. So I'll share that with people. But
if I could add one final comment here. I mentioned all these came to me. Part of my philosophical training helped me to see things, right? One is you see them. The second is you can understand what they mean. And the third is you actually can do something with that meaning. And many of us are stuck either on the seeing or the meaning part. And so I think when you get to the bumper sticker part, or the fact that we all know we should do something together communally because there's a thing in itself apart from what I think it is, many of us get from the seeing to the meaning. We see something is going on here, but many of us don't know how to act. So a final thing to add to what you said about what things we do as a family. These are very particular. I know a lot of families can pick them up. But generally, the thing that I think all of us can do in our daily lives is to see the good in the things that other people are all trying to do when they think they see what the season means, even when they get it wrong. Mm-hmm. So when people say happy holidays, what they are holy days, right? All of these are actually liturgical in their etymology. So the people who want to celebrate and say Merry Christmas now, you don't have to say, no, it's Blessed Advent, Merry Christmas later. You keep the Merry in Christmas, to keep the Mary, keep the Christ, keep the Mass, all of them, right? Yeah. So there are, I think, winsome ways to bolster the good things that you see in other people without, slapping them on the wrist immediately.
Right.
So they think you're the Ebenezer Scrooge of the time,
Yeah, so much to think about, and I appreciate you sharing with us and challenging us to keep that focus as we are preparing for Christmas. So, and to do that charitably.
Yes.
So thanks for stopping by. Again, we've been talking with Dr. Lewis Pearson from the University of St. Francis, professor over there. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Kyle.